Hi, my name is Maximus Luna. My final paper and presentation are on the importance of public trust in law enforcement. Law enforcement's ability to effectively carry out their duties to protect and serve their communities is greatly influenced by the public's trust in them. Society holds law enforcement agencies and officers in high regard. When the public was asked in a 2019 Gallup poll how confident they were in police efforts, the results of the poll found that 53% of the public had a great deal or quite a lot of confidence in police. Recently, the public confidence in police efforts fell below 50% for the first time in 20 years. The causation for this drastic fall is the killing of George Floyd by Minneapolis police officers. The public's trust can change so drastically because when the public witness officers acting unethically or not in accordance with public expectations, the public can no longer trust or support law enforcement agencies. Media portrayal in movies, games, television, etc. has created a distorted image of how real law enforcement officers should behave and perform their duties. The public begins to have unrealistic expectations of law enforcement officers based on what they have seen in law enforcement. When real law enforcement officers fail to live up to the public's expectations, the public begins to lose confidence and trust in law enforcement. Much of the public has little interaction with law enforcement. Their perception is usually influenced by how law enforcement is portrayed in the media. Much of the public's interaction with law enforcement is through formal interactions, such as being stopped for traffic violations, reporting a crime, or being involved in an accident. And depending on whether the experience was positive or negative, this interaction can influence future attitudes and trust towards law enforcement. Law enforcement can improve public trust by increasing the informal interactions between the public and law enforcement. These informal interactions are friendly conversations with officers on patrol or at a community-sponsored event. Public trust tends to deteriorate when law enforcement officers utilize manipulative strategies while conducting their day-to-day duties in law enforcement. The Reid technique is an example of a common law enforcement deceptive practice. This technique is used in interviews or interrogations. This type of practice has law enforcement officers use altering truths, outright lie, ask deceptive questions, or provide incorrect information to obtain a confession. Youth are extremely vulnerable when officers use the Reid technique on them and more likely to confess to a crime they have never committed. How can the public trust law enforcement personnel to preserve their civil rights when they are acting in a trustworthy way? Community policing trains law enforcement personnel about diversity, latent biases, and cultural competency. Learning about the importance of diversity and racial biases allows officers to engage in the community more effectively and gives officers a better understanding of the issues that are impacting the community. Community-based policing also attracts a diverse workforce. When the law enforcement department show themselves to be more inclusive, where individuals from diverse backgrounds can bring about a positive exchange of ideas that can improve upon existing policing practices. With these officers within the department start understanding each other's differences, these behaviors are carried forward into the interactions that law enforcement officers have with the public. Many law enforcement agencies have witnessed an improvement in public confidence and support as a result of community-oriented policing, but recent high-profiling shootings of unarmed African Americans by law enforcement have prompted calls for more police reform. Some law enforcement agencies are adopting a procedure known as police professional responsibility. Police professional responsibility emphasizes acts that are based on the organization's philosophical origins as indicating its aim, culture, and beliefs. Police professional responsibility is akin to a two-sided coin. One side builds ties with the community, the other has law enforcement leaders must understand the culture and mission of their organization to implement reform. Police professional responsibility approach used the guideline of the following 5 points. First, looking at how social identity and self-categorization theory can be used to understand what, how, and who an officer is. The second requires the teaching and practicing of self-management and skill mastery in empathy, respect, and restraint. The third necessitates that officers understands that there is a difference between duty and obligation. Fourth, it emphasizes the relevance of law enforcement agencies' emotional intelligence. And last, there has to be strong policies, regulations, and evaluation methods that must be put in place to maintain responsibility. To reestablish trust from de-escalation situations, the public and law enforcement can team up to further law enforcement training. In Tucson, Arizona, the Tucson Police Department has taken proactive measures to reestablish the department's relationship with the community by instituting a new training method known as the Roadhouse. It's a reality-based training program that has been designed by officers and members of the community to act out real-life situations to better train officers in the best techniques to handle high-stress situations. The role of law enforcement is to uphold the law and keep communities safe. The members in these communities trust that law enforcement will act in accordance with their values and will treat them justly and fairly. Situations can arise in which those expectations are not met and public perception can shift from positive to negative. Implementing more transparent and accountable policies and practices, as well as incorporating more community-based approaches, will allow the public to see law enforcement as allies.